So this DS4 controller has an issue with the right thumbstick, where it works very well from top to bottom, but does not work from left to right. All the buttons work, as you could see while I do the presses here, but just not this joystick. The joystick just goes up and down, and then left or right, it does not go all the way through as this one does. So let's try and change the joystick and see if this fixes our issue. Let's then remove our 4 Phillips screws. We now open the controller and split up our 2 carcasses by removing the ribbon cable. And here we remove the support for the battery and this little screw that holds the board in place. So this is inverted now. This is actually the good one. This here is the bad one. So let's take a look here and see if our potentiometer is turning, which it is. So let's just continue to do some experiments and see if there is something mechanical that is not working or if it's an electronical issue. This is one of the joysticks that I have laying around. We have to see if it matches the size and the number of pins. The number of pins on the joystick is 4 and on our Dualshock is 3, so this is probably a PS3 joystick that I had laying around, so not this one. And this one here looks much better in terms of size. It is exactly the same and has 3 pins. So yeah, this is the one we need to use to put in this place, and let's see if this fixes it. We start by using our flux to remove the cables that connect the rumble motors. And with our iron at around 300 degrees, we hit the little pads to remove the cables. Now we flood the pins with flux, so we can then unsolder the joystick. As the solder is leaded solder, we need to add a bit of unleaded solder, and this process is not easy because there's a lot of heat spreading throughout the joystick and it does not allow us to do a proper job here in terms of soldering. So definitely would recommend using hot air and the iron as well to remove this joystick. Now we enter with our solder sucker to remove as much solder as we can so that we can release this joystick. And now with our braid we will pass with our iron to remove the remains of solder that are still holding the pins in place, so we can then free up these pads. So we will now protect this connector with some Captain tape because I will be using hot air. I'm not able to remove this joystick without the hot air. We will now apply 350 degrees while holding this board with our screwdriver and with our tweezer pulling down on it. Now, with the joystick removed, let's use our iron to remove this remain of plastic that has melted. This always happens. And with the area cleaned enough, let's then insert our new joystick. It should go straight into the holes if they are all cleaned up. One of them is not, but let's then put it in anyway. We prepare the area so we can have it as clean as possible. And we will put it in place as best as we can. We will clean again with a cotton swab and IPA so we can have the area cleaned from old residue. And we will add now some flux in order for the solder to flow, so we can put this joystick in place. Again, the hard part here is that the heat is dissipating throughout the joystick, so it's pretty hard to finish the job. So if you have helping hands, secure the board with these helping hands and then use hot air as well, so it's much easier. But don't use hot air too hot, otherwise you'll melt the joystick. And it's a really crappy soldering job, but I don't have means to do it another way, but it should be fixed in place. Let's then do the test and see if it works again or not. So we will now assemble the controller all together so we can then test it. The wiring for the rumble motors is a bit dry out, so we need to be careful while pulling it so we can solder it in place. We just had a little bit of solder to the wire so we can put it back on its pad. With the controller fully back together, it feels good and the button clicks, not as much as the original, but it clicks. When assembling it, we have a little situation over here. The pads on the flex cable, they were turned down, so we need to straighten them up and see if we manage to fix it that way. So we are barely good with this. We just need to straighten the tip, because if we put it on the connector like so, it will disassemble. And it just did. So we need to sort out a new solution for this little cable. So I ended up cutting the cable, and it fits okay on the connector again, as you can see over there. Let's then give it a go and see if it does the connection. It does. It's working. So our cutting the cable thing worked. So with the controller assembled, let's then go into Gregman website to check if the controller is working properly or not after the switch of the joystick. As you can see, it has a little bit of drift, but it already circles the full circle, and it didn't do that before. So I will now use a web page that I found that can calibrate the joysticks and see if that works. So this is the page. Let's then connect our controller. Just press the connect button there, choose the type of controller and connect. And now we have the calibration page. We press on calibrate the controller, and we follow these steps all the way to the end until we have finished this little wizard. With the calibration done, don't forget to save so it can keep the settings we have calibrated on. So the range calibration is now done. As you can see on the back, the controllers are working perfectly and going to center. So we press done. The calibration is completed, and now we just need to save it so it works forever and ever. You press the save and it's done. Hopefully you have enjoyed this video. If you did, leave it a thumbs up, leave a subscription on the channel, and I will see you on the next video.